If I can turn to the panelists and get their views, short inputs into what they believe are currently the impediments that they face that can get us to the full potential. So I'm going to start with Chandan. So, Chandan, why don't you sort of explain to us?
The lot depends on, the availability of mobile networks. And for mobile networks, there's a lot of dependency on the spectrum. We have heard a lot about, shortage of spectrum. And thanks to Government of India, last year we saw some new policies, M&A, spectrum trading, spectrum sharing. And now new spectrum, a huge chunk of spectrum is going to be made available in the forthcoming auction. So spectrum, some kind of spectrum will be made available. But one point I would like to mention here is, if you look at India's mobile infrastructure, there are around 400,000 mobile towers. And out of these 400,000 mobile towers, only 15% mobile towers are connected through optical fiber cables. The rest all depend on microwave. And microwave also, currently in India, we run on traditional bands like 15 gigahertz, 18 gigahertz, or 23 gigahertz. These bands can provide only 300 or 350 Mbps kind of backhaul capacity, wherein if we have to implement Digital India mission, we need ubiquitous, ultra broadband kind of networks. So these backhaul capacities are not enough. So that is one. Another point is about fiberization. We have very less fiberization, so fixed broadband cannot be implemented. So going forward, I think we need to think about, though we are, having a lot of mobile broadband, at the same time, we need to start building fixed broadband. And then we can have fixed mobile convergence, and then later on we can add content to it, and we can, have complete package of, this one for the users.
What would be your top two impediments which need to get fixed to get this thing going far and wide, especially into the rural sector?
For Digital India to succeed, it has to succeed in rural India. The impediments that one faces in rural India, I will directly first start with power grid connectivity. We have about 19,000 villages which do not have grid power. Now, there are towns and rural sectors or rural footprints or villages which do have power, which is again limited to 14 hours possibly, and the quality of power is not too good. This is the main impediment for rolling out. However, I would like to state one more point here. See, typically, a rural subscriber tends to use his handheld in receive-only mode, by which I mean he tends to receive calls more than he makes calls. Therefore, the average revenue a tower site or a cell site creates in a rural area is limited. So one can look at 2 or 3 solutions here. I think if the key stakeholders of the sector, they being telecom operators, tower companies, and OEMs. As far as the operators are concerned, since I'm talking of rural sector, if you look at sector C circles, license fee being reduced from 6% to 2%, possibly for a limited period of time, which gives that leeway to telecom operators to look at rural rollouts. Similarly, possibly utilizing unused USO funds for purchase of hardware, including active equipment, in a subsidized manner for equipment. And finally, for tower company like ours, GTL Infrastructure, we had participated in 2006 and 2007 when USO project was used to launch rural sites. And at that point of time, it was quite successful. I mean, we were involved not in just the rollout, but including the policy making. And about 8,000 cell sites were rolled out. I think the similar project could be utilized in a phase second manner.
So changes in the USO, the manner in which the USO fund is being used.
Absolutely.
So can I come to you? What do you think are the impediments from your perspective, where you stand?
The key impediment which we see is that still we have a lot of broken chains between the government organizations. So the Ministry of Communication and IT does have a vision which they want to fulfill. But for manufacturers like us, they need to get on board the finance ministry, the customs authorities, to have a uniformity. It's very difficult for, when it comes on me to explain it to my outside colleagues, that why do we have so many diversities, that different states have different taxations, importing goods into India, why it's so difficult, with different sorts of taxes and custom duties being levied, which can at times be retrospective, not only going forward. The second thing which comes to my mind is that in more than 30% of the goods which are sold, IT and electronic goods which are getting sold in India are counterfeit and fake. And that market is growing at twice the speed of prime and correct products which are getting sold. Today, if we look at those markets, India has become like a dumping ground of used equipments, where high-end equipments are getting sold in kgs just because they have been bought as scrap from the Western economies and been dumped in India. So there has to be something done by the government to curb all these things, which starts from the borders of India, that these things have to be stopped from coming into India and being dumped.
Jagdish, if I could come to you, what are the big hurdles in the way to sort of galloping over?
Well, I think, the government's got to do what it can do best, which to me is, if you can enable the infrastructure and not necessarily treat the providers as golden goose, then probably it will help put the money back into investing in creating the infrastructure rather than paying the money towards. So mind shift needs to happen in saying, is this the place where I make money to do something else in the economy? Or is this the place where I create money because this is where the rest of the world will come to, or the rest of my economies come to? Second, I think, which the government has already started, which I think will make a huge change, is enabling the conversion from cash to digital. Those are two things that I would think will hugely, hugely change the face of digital economy.
Thank you. Sandeep, what do you think, from where you see 3 or 4 things, impediments or initiatives that must be taken to get this thing going?
One is I mentioned about PPP. I don't know whether we are harnessing the industry participation enough even now. So as long as this stays as government-only program and all of us are sitting outside critiquing it, it's not going to work. So industry has to come together. And are there policies needed to get industry on board faster, to get industry on board fully? That must be looked into. So that partnership of industry and government is a must for this to become successful. I think second big thing is, the whole ease of doing business in the country. And is the Digital India program, should we set timelines with deliverables? And is there a steering committee? Is there a CEO kind of a body which cuts across ministries?
The CTO for the government.
Yeah. Right? Because otherwise, one ministry, second ministry, third ministry, they will all have objectives. They all have their own pressures. But someone has to say, this is what needs to get done, get them together, get it done, publish a report saying this is done, this is pending. So that CTO or CEO who tracks progress and publishes reports, and it can be at a PMO level or wherever, I don't know, but that is a must to track progress, because with an open timeline, it'll not succeed, and the time is of the essence. If we want India to progress, this has to happen in the next 1 or 2 years.
Thank you to the panelists, thank you to the audience for being here, thank you for listening, thank you for that very important input and the comments that were given. Thank you, panelists, thank you, audiences. Thank you.